Welcome for this Sunday's Gospel Reflection. Today is Pentecost. We welcome the Holy Spirit. In the 1870s, Dr. Zamenhof, a Polish Jewish ophthalmologist, dreamt of creating one common language for all humanity. It was called Esperanto. The aim, in his words, was to reduce the time and labor we spend in learning foreign tongues. That would be very comfortable for children at school. So that we will foster harmony between people from different countries. And all the nations, that was his dream, would be united in a common brotherhood. Isn't this the dream of Jesus, that they may all be one? And he continues about his childhood. The place where I was born and spent my childhood, the inhabitants were divided into four distinct groups. There were the Russians, the Poles, the Germans, and the Jews. And each of these spoke their own language and looked on all the others as enemies. In such a town, a sensitive nature feels more acutely the misery caused by language division. The diversity of languages is the first, or at least the most influential basis for the separation of the human family into groups of enemies. This is Dr. Zamenhof. Well, we know in our experience the consequences of the language barriers that separate people. Would the woes and conflicts of the world be over if, as Dr. Zamenhof dreamt, all people spoke the same language? Is there hope? Esperanto, a hope that they may all be one. Would having the same grammar, the same vocabulary, the same idiom really bring people together? I have my doubts. You see, in Malta, we only speak one language, officially at least. But how many conflicts, rivalries in politics, families, business, social classes, divisions all over, discriminations, violence, even here at home in this tiny island with one language. Isn't this the situation that the apostles lived after the ascension? They locked themselves up in the cenacle with Mary out of fear. They were terrified that the anger of the Jewish authorities, now that Jesus was gone, would turn against them, because Jesus spoke a totally different language from that of the Jewish authorities. Have you ever felt this paralyzing fear of the judgment of others, the misunderstandings, the misinterpretation of what you say or what you believe? How many do not dare say what they think, or do not dare live up to what they believe because of fear, even if it's just the fear of being misunderstood? Everyone is terrified of being judged and condemned. All over the world, people are paying the heavy price for speaking out for their beliefs, their language. People like Alexei Navalny in Russia, Aung San Suu Kyi in Myanmar, Uyghurs in China, Hindus in Pakistan, Muslims in India. Division, division, conflict, conflict. You see, our language, it's not just our words. Our language is who we are. Our language is our life experience accumulated over generations. It is our identity. This is not just about freedom of speech, the ability to say what we like. This is about the freedom to be ourselves. That's the language. The apostles were locked in and could not dare to be who they had become after meeting and living with Jesus. They were afraid that no one else spoke their language. No one had experienced what they had experienced and lived with Jesus. So no one would understand them if they were even to try to share their experience openly. Have you never experienced this in your life? Have you never felt afraid to say what you have lived, what you really believe? Because you were afraid no one would understand. Have you never caught yourself saying things you think the others would like to hear, just to make sure that you are accepted? We humans find it so difficult to believe that there does exist a universal language which everyone, from the most educated to the most illiterate person, which everyone is capable of speaking. And what is this common language, this inbuilt Esperanto in our hearts? And the language is the language of love. It is the language of God's own Spirit, who is love. This is what we are celebrating today. Our faith is in this saving truth. There is indeed one language that people of all languages and origins can understand if they are truly human. It's the language of the Spirit of love. It is the only language that can be like the wind that clears away our fears, our small mindedness. It is the fire that is nourished by fresh oxygen, which revamps the fire and consumes our pettiness and fears, to kindle in us that common language we all have received from our Father in heaven when He created us. And marvel of marvels, those same people who had been so terrified because they are different became themselves transformed. Not only those who went out of the cenacle became transformed, but the people who heard them were transformed. People are not transformed because we understand the language, but it is because they hear us speaking their own language. And it is only love that can speak to the beloved in his or her own language. Only love can overcome differences, and only love can speak the language of the beloved. This is the miracle of Pentecost. It's nothing to do with the courage of the apostles to go out and to preach their own beliefs, their own convictions to the people. No, 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 no. It is about going out to the people to walk with them where they are, to speak their language, to help them become who they truly are. That is love. It's all about you and not about you understanding me. It's about me understanding you and speaking your own language. It is loving others for who they are and not making them change to become who we want them to become. That is speaking a language that they recognize as their own. And that is how God works in us. He helps each and every one of us to discover that we can also speak God's own language of love. This is our truly universal and native language as humans. Listening carefully and acknowledging the love that is in the heart of all God's children even if it is still hidden or locked up behind the closed doors of our human fears, is the only way it can be released, and like a wildfire will transform the world. As the saintly Jesuit anthropologist Teilhard de Chardin has said, someday, after mastering the winds, the waves, the tides, and gravity, today we can add, after conquering space, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And then, for the second time in the history of humanity, man will have discovered fire. This is the one common language that can and will unite humanity much better than just Esperanto. Yet, to speak Esperanto means to speak the language of hope, the language of trust, the language of love, which are all God's gifts of the Spirit, given to us today and every day. God bless you and thank you.